In every heartache, there's a hidden seed of strength. Join Portia Booker on the Grief Grantor as we journey through stories of resilience, finding gratitude in the echoes of grief. Together, we transform sorrow into strength, pain into purpose. Welcome to the Grief Grantor, where your healing journey begins.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Grief Grantor. Happy 2024. Listen, everybody, I have to say, first and foremost, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for currently the life that I have, right? Through all of the loss that I've experienced, through all of the transitions, through all of the changes, my heart still stays in a space of gratitude. You know, one of the things that I experienced before the end of 2023 was the completed suicide of one of my dear friends. And one of the things that I learned through their transition, number one, is finding gratitude in the time that I spent with them. You know, I won't go into too many details because it is a very raw subject, but I know that on this episode of the Grief Grantor, we have a very special guest who will speak more into that. So I'm grateful for the time that I spent with this individual, because one of the things that they always did whenever I was in their presence was make me laugh. And as they said, laughter is the best medicine. I mean, one of the things that I remember was going out to the boat with them several years ago. And I've shared this story that I cannot swim at all. So that is on my bucket list to learn in 2024, is finally learn how to swim. Well, let's just go back to the day that I went out to the boat with them. Well, I decided to be that person to say yes to a dare. So they have one of those trick boat things that's off the back of the main boat where it goes over the waves, that whole thing. So luckily, y'all, I was smart enough to put on my life jacket to keep me from sinking all the way to the bottom like a rock. Well, let's just say I was doing good, right? Riding this wave like nobody's business. You would have thought I was a surfer at some point in my life, but that's for a whole nother day, maybe. Well, everything was fine, y'all. Everything was fine until we stopped the boat in the middle of the lake. Well, of course, there's other boats that are coming around and kicking up the wave. So, of course, what happens? The strong wave kicks up and knocks me flat into the water. So I go right under. I'm like, oh, she talking mushrooms. We'll keep it PG. And I remember it happening in slow motion. Like literally, I go right under. I'm watching the boat. I'm like, oh my God, this thing's going under. I go under, and of course, I got my life jacket on, so I'm coming right back up. I do a quick little flip like I'm a gymnast. And I just remember my sister being there with me. She's like, Portia's underwater. Portia can't swim. You guys, I am absolutely proud of myself for remaining calm in the situation, because normally when you panic in something like that, that's when you're apt to drown. And I remember my friend asking me, saying, Portia, do you mind getting back on the trick boat? And I said, no, I'm not getting back on the trick boat. You bring that main boat back over here, because I'm done, because my hair is wet. And as y'all know, as women, we don't like to get our hair wet unless we control the water functionality. I'll say it in a nice way. But I remember laughing hysterically months later after the experience, the fact that I almost died. But at the same time, it was in that moment where I found gratitude to be able to talk about this memory and honor that time of my beloved friend who made their transition. And so what I want to just reiterate to everybody today is, number one, when there is a transition, there truly is a transformation in some aspect of our lives and also in the lives of others who are around us. Number two, finding gratitude in that moment. I mean, I'm sure that you guys, people tell me that I'm funny all the time. I inhale puns and exhale sarcasm. I say it all the time. And I'm grateful that I'm able to share that story as, number one, a time when I almost died. Number two, the fact that I lived to tell the tale. Number three, the fact that I'm able to still share that piece of my friend, even though they are no longer physically here. Their essence still embodies everything that I do on a daily basis. And also create that level of empowerment by sharing, yes, it's still a raw subject for me, but also being empowered by sharing my story and theirs in order to create a new wave of change. So on that note, guys, we're going to take our first quick break right here on the Grief Grantor. When we come back, we are going to be joined by a very special guest who is going to dive more into the topic of suicide. So we'll be right back.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Gina.
And we're the hosts on Fire and Light Talk. So join us every Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Positive vibrations right here on E360 TV.
All right, everybody, welcome back right here on the Grief Grantor. Before we went to break, one of the things that I talked about was obviously speaking on the life and transition of my friend in 2023 who completed suicide. And right before they did this, right, I was thinking about finding gratitude in being able to be a part of their journey for the time that I was with them, right? And being able to laugh at stories of me almost dying in their presence. But hey, you know, that's the thing, right? Laughter is the best medicine. And I'm a firm believer that each person that comes into our life, whether it's for a season or a lifetime, we take something from them. It's like I say about the book, The Game of Life by Florence Scovel Shinn. Man is not your enemy. Man is not your friend, for man is your teacher. So when you think about that and apply it to life, every person, every event, every change is there in our life to create a lesson for us to teach other people to pay it forward. So on that note, today we have a very special guest on the show. I'm going to introduce them because how we met. And this is another reason how I was able to get my show on E360 TV. This individual also shares a story around someone in their life, in their journey, completing suicide. And through that transition in their life, they've been able to cultivate a level of education and a level of what I like to call changing the narrative through their own personal story. So today I have the honor of bringing on stage Miss Kelli Melissa Reinhardt. Kelli, how you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much. I love your story. Also, I was giggling.
Well, I appreciate it, Kelli. I think maybe that's a sign for me to go on my comedic tour journey. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. I got to refine some things, but yes. Kelli, first and foremost, I always love to start off my conversations with gratitude. And I'm going to start a little different with you. Considering your journey of your sister making her transition through a completed suicide in 2017, what would you say is the gratitude that you have for the journey that you had with her during that time and also now?
I love that question. I actually have never been asked that question. So, gosh, she was actually the sister that I grew up with the most. So we had 5 girls in my family and I was a baby. Yeah. So, she was the middle sister on my mom's side, and I grew up with her the most because she was in the house longer than any of my other sisters. So I feel like, my life path has followed her life path in so many ways, not exactly, but very similar. And I learned a lot from her. And that was the one thing that I was just really grateful for. And something that I talk about is, I joke about, well, I love how you said humor is one of those things, because I always say I called my sister for cooking all the time. And I'm pretty sure my husband wishes she was still alive because I tend to burn most everything. Not anymore. I'm getting better. But she was that person that I would call when I was like, I don't know how to make blah, blah, blah. And she'd help me with that. So I think I am just grateful for the lessons that she taught me and how I was able to call her for cooking advice, or just even advice in general. That was like the one thing that my sister did the best. So I'm just really grateful for being able to spend what time I was able to with her, for sure.
Kelli, I got to ask this on a cooking note. I'm somebody who cooks now more than anything. When I was in college X amount of years ago. You couldn't get me to step foot in the kitchen to cook anything. I mean, I was the girl, look, I'm making me a PB&J, slap some peanut butter, a little bit of jelly, and then I'm out the door, keeping it moving. And I've been the one to keep our family's traditions of certain dishes, such as great grandma's sweet potatoes, her sweet potato pie, even the potato salad that I had the opportunity to make for Thanksgiving this past year. And so, Kelli, what's maybe one recipe that your sister passed down to you that either you wish you could make or something that you have been able to do?
Actually, it's interesting. Over the holidays, my family, we all started kind of talking about this too. Like my mom pulled out her recipe book and, I mentioned, cause I got my sisters a lot of her cookbooks. And so my nephew was like, oh, I wondered where those went. And I'm like, yeah, they're, if you ever need them. So, I think the one thing that I still continue to make is my sister's cheese enchiladas. They're so good. Like I have kind of changed it a little bit and added like shredded chicken in there. I found this really good shredded chicken from Target, interestingly enough. But so we throw that in there. But that's like the one thing, and it's so simple. And that's what I loved about how my sister cooked is it wasn't hard. Some things she made were hard, but most of them were pretty simple. So yeah, I've learned over time. I do not burn everything now, every once in a while, but I like my bacon crispy. So yeah.
Kelli, can you share with our audience really fast when you're making these cheese enchiladas and they have the resemblance in physicality, the scent of as though your sister is present with you in the kitchen. Can you share that experience with us? Because I think a lot of people, when they are in their journey of grief, right? When someone in their life has transitioned and they have these moments of honoring their loved one's memory through a recipe, through a tradition such as board games. Can you share with us what that experience is like from, maybe sometimes you get a little teary eyed, maybe you start laughing because you think of like your sister telling you, hey, Kelli, you're burning this a little too much. Like, can you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, just even like recalling the memories, right? Like it's not something I have to open the cookbook, but I do remember and know like when the first time I tried to make it on my own and I had to call her and be like, I don't know if I got the right thing. And she's like, it's fine. It's like 4 ingredients. It's fine. So definitely it just every time I make it, I just feel like, you know how they say there's those signs that you see, whether it's numbers or those feelings or something that like happens while you're doing cooking or whatever it is, that just often comes up for me. And it feels like almost nostalgic. It feels like, oh yeah, I remember this from my sister, or if it was somebody else's that I was making a recipe, I'm like, oh, I remember this from grandma. And so it just like, it brings on kind of those warm feelings of like nostalgia. And I think that at moments, gonna get me. The emotions like do come up, but it's also like, I almost get mad in a way because I'm like, man, you're supposed to be here so that I can call you so that I can ask the question right now versus having to wait. But it's that like good feeling. It's a mixture of like being mad, but then also being happy that I was able to learn these things from her. So yeah, I think it's just a mixture of all the emotions that kind of come together. And then you're like, oh yeah, I learned this from my sister and it's probably in her cookbook somewhere, but good thing I remembered this one. So.
And Kelli, thank you for sharing that because I wanted to touch back on what you mentioned about feeling angry that she's not physically here, but also finding that gratitude of being able to keep this memory, this legacy alive. How did you, Kelli, learn to honor the duality of both of those emotions? Because I think when we are in seasons of grief, we tend to want to suppress or not hold space for both emotions, what I like to call fighting over the microphone. Mm-hmm. How did you learn to hold space for both of those? And how can you share with our audience a way for them to be able to honor both emotions, or however many emotions surface during moments like this?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it goes back to 2018. I know that in 2017, after my sister passed, my coping mechanism was just going. I had a 1.5-year-old, like I had to just keep going for my family. I felt like I had to be strong, and I hit what I call a virtual wall. I ultimately came to a place that I was like, I need to take care of myself. I need to grieve. I had not processed her death at that point. I was just doing everything I could, kind of in that fight or flight response. And ultimately, I actually went into this 3-day seminar that I thought was going to be like a rah, like I'm going to be all excited and pumped up and motivated. And the whole first day I was bawling, and I was like, what in the heck just happened? But it was because we were able to do a process that the leader called The Day You Were Born. And it went back to the day I was born, but it all centered around my sister. And what I didn't realize at that time was that I needed to forgive her and forgive myself, which was so powerful. And I didn't I think for me, and as I talk now, I call it the shoulda, coulda, woulda, hoodoo, voodoo, we do's. I could have done this. I should have done that. I could, like all these things come up, especially with the loss of a suicide, because oftentimes you don't know. My sister didn't leave a note. We couldn't break into her phone. Like we couldn't get into any of her electronics. So we didn't have any answers. And so I really, at that moment, I forgave myself, which was really, really powerful. And I forgave her, which opened up this door of me being able to understand my emotions a lot better. And over time, I've now gained a ton of resources and information, and the certain process that we used is called NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. And over time, as I've learned more and more about this, I have become more aware of my feelings and how to process them. And at those moments, like I don't have to pick and choose. Like it is what it is at this point. I feel much more at this point in my life that I have a lot more choice in how I react to things. And that has come over time. I mean, I'm going into my 7th year. And it really, like this year, it'll be 7 years. And so it's taken time. It's not something that just happens overnight. And I still have what I call the roller coaster of emotions. Some days I don't want to get out of bed. And then other days I can talk about her till I'm blue in the face. And then there's moments that it catches me, just like earlier, that I don't ever plan, but it's there. And that's what happens. And I'm okay at this point of allowing that space for those emotions. And I'm getting better. I'm still learning how to get better to I can create a space for others to share their emotions, but I sometimes don't do that for myself. And so now I'm just learning how to do that and be okay if I'm fluctuating between emotions. I mean, and it can be one moment to another moment, and that's okay.
Kelli, one of the things that I love what you just mentioned, you're like speaking my language, because even though I hold space, I mean, my show is called the Grief Grantor for a reason. And a lot of people come to me because they know that I'll hold space for them, their grief, right? But I have to be honest, I also have to learn to grant myself permission to grieve in my own journey as well. So we're going to take a quick break right here on the Grief Grantor, everybody. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Kelli. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Kelli Melissa Reinhardt, host of Make Mental Health Matter. Join me on Mondays at 11 a.m. and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on the Achieve TV network right here on E360 TV.
All right, everybody, welcome back right here on the Grief Grantor. We are joined by Kelli, and we're just having an amazing dialogue about her journey of her sister completing suicide and also her journey of learning about herself and incorporating her sister's legacy into everything that she does. Kelli, before we jump into the next part of the show, if our audience wants to connect with you and learn more about your work, is there a website or a social media handle you can share with us today?
Yes. Everything is under BCC Evolution. And so if you can't remember BCC, just think of a blind carbon copy email. That's kind of where it came from. So yeah, so bccevolution.org is my website and my nonprofit website. And we're under every single social channel under BCC Evolution.
Excellent. Excellent. So those of you, like Kelli said, BCC, blind carbon copy, you could definitely find her there. Kelli, before we went to break, one of the things that I love that you talked about, and I normally save that for the end of the show, but I'm going to dive right into it, is forgiveness. This 3-day seminar cultivated this level of awareness for you, where you were able to not only forgive your sister for what happened with her and to her, but also learning to forgive yourself in that moment. And Kelli, can you share with our audience, what did that look like? What was maybe either the mantra that you said to yourself or journal prompt or whatever activity it was that helped you to forgive yourself?
So I am not a person in the past that has ever done meditation I mean, I've done yoga like here and there, but I'm not like, or I haven't in the past been somebody who felt like universally connected or spiritually connected, whatever you want to call it. And so when I was asked to really like go into my unconscious mind to like go back to the day I was born, I was like, I don't know what is happening. It was more of a guided, I guess, not meditation, but kind of a guided process. And at that moment, I felt really open that I could just allow my brain to imagine that when I was born, I don't know what it looks like when I was born, but my unconscious mind does. And so at that moment, and I kind of just allowed whatever was going to come up, which is not something that I would have normally done in the past. And that's when it really went to my sister. And I almost at first tried to fight it because I was like, no, I don't want to go back. Right. Like I wasn't in a place in my life that I knew how to process what had happened. And I also was not somebody that used to cry ever in front of anybody. Like I was, yeah, like I had to be the strong one. I felt like I had to be the strong one. And so at that moment, when I was able to just let that go and allow the facilitator to guide me into this process, and then where forgiveness showed up, that was mind-blowing for me. And that's when at that moment I was like, I need to learn more about this NLP thing, like if that's what it's called, like I don't know, but also learn more about that forgiveness piece because it wasn't something that I had ever practiced. And now I know, because since then I've actually gotten my practitioner certification, my master practitioner certification, my trainers and my consulting, and I'm getting my International Coaching Federation certification because it's been so powerful for me. And we actually have it's called the forgiveness process. And what I've learned is that forgiveness is not for that other person. It's actually for us. And I never knew that before, like ever, because I was like, well, I was that stubborn person. That was me. I was like, I'm not going to forgive them. That's not going to happen. There's no way that, and I've lots of like traumatic experiences in the past, which is a whole different other story. But I've always been stubborn and I'm like, I'm not going to forgive them. And then once I learned this tool, I was like, man, it feels so much better for me to forgive. I don't have to say it to them. They don't have to recognize that I'm forgiving them. Nothing has to be like, other than like my sister, of course, she's passed, so I can't like say it to her, but other people in my past who have maybe wronged me or I'm frustrated with, I have learned this tool, and it's been helpful for me, for my mental capacity to be able to just move forward in life. And that was super powerful, knowing and understanding forgiveness is for me. It's not for the other person.
Ooh, Kelli, you speak in my language, because for me, it took for my father to be making his transition for me to learn to forgive, because it was a couple months before his transition where I forgave him for being absent in my life and not being present for certain key moments in my journey, and his stubbornness and all the things. And I spoke at his funeral. I talked about that. I talked about how learning to forgive him set my soul free, where I don't hold on to a bunch of guilt, resentment, but it took me to be the bigger person in that moment, in that time, to let that go and recognize it's not about them. This is about me and my healing journey. And Kelli, something that you brought up that really like touches my soul, of course, obviously, is just hearing how through your sister's transition, you've witnessed and birthed a transformation within yourself. And I love to ask this question. I used to ask it on my previous podcast, Grew with Portia, is I believe that grief is similar to a door closing and another door opening. And what would you say, Kelli, was the hidden gift that you've been given through your sister's transition?
I love this question also. And it wasn't something that I thought about until somebody asked or pointed out. They asked the question, do you think that your sister put you in the place that you were supposed to be? And at first I was like, no, like that doesn't make sense. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, like she was always that person that like knew, see, it's going to get me again. She always was that person that knew or, put me in these positions that she knew that I could handle and that I was better than what I thought of myself. So when I really started thinking about it, I was like, she knew that I could take this on, and she knew that I could handle getting into this position of doing my nonprofit, which is a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit. And really, truly, although I would never say that somebody transitioning or passing is a blessing in disguise, but in a way, she knew I was going to be okay. And she also guided me into this space of being in a nonprofit that I could help impact other people's lives, and then got me connected with these communities that were able to give me more tools, give me more resources, give me more information as related to mental health and suicide. And so I was able to shift that. And in my past, you would have never caught me on stage. You would have never caught me being on TV shows. I was petrified of public speaking. And actually in college, it was like one of the classes I almost failed because I didn't want to talk in front of anybody. So she totally, like, I really truly feel like, although the death or the transition of her dying by suicide is traumatic and it's a tragedy, it also birthed something beautiful, which is the nonprofit and the confidence within myself to be able to help and impact other lives.
Oh, Kelli, I send my heart out to you because I can feel it. I feel the same way about my mom and my dad. My mom was definitely my cheerleader through it all. I mean, my first TV career, my mom was the one who encouraged me. She said, Portia, if it's what you really want to do, go for it. What's the hurt? You know, and even as my mom was making her transition, one of the things that she said to me was, Portia, mommy's job is done. Mommy's job is done. And when I think about it now, Kelli, I recognize that my mom didn't want us to know she was transitioning. She wanted to make sure that we were okay. And it was during that last hour of my mom being physically here, I had to give my mom permission to go. My mother was going to hold on as long as she could. But I said, Mommy, it's okay. I got it. Mommy, it's okay. I got it. And I feel honored that I was able to give her that send off, as hard as it was, as painful as it was, to literally watch her go to her next destination in life. I knew that I would be okay. And my mom knew that about me. You know, and sometimes I used to feel like, geez, Mom, why do you got your foot up my butt so heavy? Like, you know, why do you got to be so hard on me? But I'm grateful that she was, because it gave me tools to be able to navigate life and be able to help other people with their grief journey because of what I went through. And Kelli, I got a funny story similar to yours with college. Some people know this story. When I was in J school, we had to audition to be on the TV network inside of Kent State. And I remember reading from the teleprompter the very first time. And I remember getting up, running out of the studio, and hiding in the bathroom. And my friend comes down the hallway and she says to me, Portia, you did amazing. You were a little quiet, but you read through everything impeccably. And in my mind, I thought I sounded like a cat being, you know, cat scratching on the walls, or like when you take nails to a chalkboard type of thing. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. But it's like, I would have never thought that experience would lead me to where I am today, where I'm hosting my own TV show, right? So similar to you, Kelli, I get it. It's like, you never know what will push you forward. And to come back to that hidden gift in our grief journey, I was a full-time caregiver of my mother for the last couple years before her transition. And I stopped living. I stopped going out with friends. I stopped doing things for me because my focus became solely on her care, going to her doctor's appointments, advocating for her, making sure her meds are right. So I completely forgot about me. But through her transition, it opened the door for me to, number one, start living again. Number two, continue to move forward with my mission, with my messaging, and to help more people in some capacity, because I've always been passionate about helping people. And so her transition birthed that transformation in me. I mean, 3 months after my mom transitioned, I wrote my first book. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? So I'm definitely there with you, Kelli, when, as bitter as it is, there's still beautiful moments within these transitions of different people or changes in our lives. So we're going to take another quick break right here on the Grief Grantor, everybody. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Kelli. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Clara Capano, your host for Women Winning Their Way, where we talk about how you can create success all on your terms. Join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Limelight Network here on E360 TV.
All right, everybody, welcome back right here on the Grief Grantor. We are joined by Kelli, and we're continuing our conversation around finding empowerment in our grief journey and also being open to the hidden gifts that come through grief. Kelli, one of the things that I want to touch on is your organization, BCC. One of the things that I think about when it comes to suicide or anything mental health related is the stigma that's placed on it. And I'm curious, Kelli, before you share about your organization, what was your thoughts on suicide in general before your sister's transition, and how did that change after?
That's a question I haven't been asked before either. So in the past, I had always said if somebody dies by suicide or commits suicide, I am never going to their funeral. That's what I said because I didn't understand it. I mean, it wasn't something we talked about, right? It wasn't in the news. We weren't talking about mental health. We weren't talking about suicide. We knew about it. I mean, when I grew up, like the internet wasn't even around at that point. So, I mean, now the kids have access to everything, right? Like as now everybody has access to everything and the media is much more prominent. I feel like really talking about mental health, which is great. But suicide definitely wasn't something I mean, I was born and raised in Utah and I actually was born and raised Mormon and I had a lot of strong beliefs in the faith community up until I got a little bit older. And then, I mean, I made a transition in life where I think in a way I was very sheltered and I know that about myself. Like I didn't have the experiences maybe that others did, or I didn't necessarily acknowledge that I had those experiences. I mean, I moved to Colorado when I was 7, so it was much different than Utah. But also it just wasn't something we talked about. And so for me, when I heard that word, I always said that I would never go to your funeral, but I actually had a cousin who completed suicide when she was 16. And that was like a long time before my sister passed. And then I actually had a cousin. So my cousin's brother, the same cousin, her brother, he overdosed a year after she died by suicide. And I didn't understand it. I was younger and I didn't really fully understand what was going on. And then when my sister passed, there was no way I was not going to her celebration of life. And that's what really sparked my curiosity of understanding more because I didn't know much about it, nor had I even processed either one of my cousin's deaths. And that's what really led me. Actually, I was working with another organization that her daughter died by the choking game, and then her ex-husband died by suicide. And I had helped her for years and years and years and years, still not fully understanding what I was helping with. And then when I went to my sister's celebration of life, of course, I understood then, and it was more of, I was so hyper focused on the suicide prevention aspect, but my sister was a caregiver for a paraplegic and she also was a CPR instructor. So I knew I wanted to do something in the health space. And that's kind of how we started transitioning really into the mental health and suicide prevention. But yeah, I definitely was one of those person that was like, I'm not going to your funeral if you die by suicide, because I didn't understand. And there was a lot of stigma around it.
And what would you say now, Kelli, is your new profound understanding around suicide in comparison to then?
I mean, now it's like so different, just looking at it from a different lens of people don't generally want to die. There are a couple people that do, or some people that do, but most people, the reason that they take their own life is because they don't know how to express how badly they're feeling. Or maybe they feel like their situation that they're currently going through is so intense that they don't see any other way out. And that's the only option that they know. And knowing how people are feeling and looking at it from a different lens, I don't judge them, because although every single time I hear about somebody dying by suicide, my automatic thought now is, gosh, I wish I would have known what they were going through and we didn't have that conversation. Or if it's somebody else that I don't know, then it's like, oh gosh, I wish I could have taught this person or the people in their lives like what to look out for and how to have those open conversations. Like, most people just don't want to feel alone, and they actually feel like they're being a burden on their family, versus a lot of people think that it's very selfish, and it's actually very selfless when we talk about suicide. And that's the thing, is that's where that stigma comes in. That's where the misunderstanding comes in, is it's not selfish, it's selfless, because they truly feel like without them in this world, everybody else around them will be better. And the current situation, whatever they're going through, will be resolved. And oftentimes it's really that they want the pain to end. Whatever the pain is that they're going through, they want that to end. And if we can look at it from that perspective, how many more conversations can we now start to have to find out before it's too late?
Kelli, I want to ask this for our audience, right? Because there's still so much stigma around mental health, but I think in particular with suicide, where there's this notion that the person who completes it is selfish. But as you just have reiterated, it's selfless because internally, they potentially feel as though nobody can really understand me, and the pain is too great to place on other people to burden them. And Kelli, how can our audience who's tuning in, how can they learn to convert that shame around the stigma of suicide, whether it's someone in their own life or someone who is in close proximity? Because I'm a firm believer that suicide is similar to cancer. It doesn't just affect the family, the nucleus, but it affects other people around them, their whole community. How can we learn to convert that shame around it to a strength to help other people, instead of being stuck in it, learn to help them to move with it and move through it, to pay it forward?
Yeah, I love that question. So thank you for asking that. I think the biggest thing is, how do we start having these conversations, right? Like, one of the tools that I teach in my classes it's called non-judgmental listening, because oftentimes as humans, right, like, we look at things from our own perspective, our own lens, our own model of the world, versus trying to understand other people and what they're experiencing. What I talk about, because I also do a grief and loss group, and I often say is that my experience is going to be very different from your experience. Every single person in this world has a different experience. Although you and I may go through similar experiences, I will never, ever truly understand what your experience is unless I ask you, right? The conversation has to be had, but I will never know, no matter how many conversations we have. I can't feel your experience and you can't feel my experience, right? Like, it's very different. And if we can understand that, and also just have those conversations of what is going on, teaching people how to, again, recognize the signs, the symptoms, what are the questions, the good questions that we can ask people to get more information, versus those questions that are going to give you automatic responses. Those are definitely tools that I teach people all the time in the classes that we offer, because simply going into a conversation and trying to listen is great. That's oftentimes what people need to move through, is somebody that they can trust, somebody that's actually going to listen, and then add that extra element of non-judgmental listening on top, taking ourselves out of the equation, taking our experience out of the equation, and simply allowing that person to express whatever it is. And then the other thing that I also like to say is watch what your face is doing in these conversations, because we don't want to be like deer in the headlights, right? Like, oh my gosh, what did you tell me? Or being like our face, I don't know, my face does funny things in conversations sometimes. So I am one of those people. So in these conversations, like I have to be aware of what is my face doing. Am I showing that I'm listening? Am I showing that I'm concerned? Am I showing that I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this information? And I like to tell people, and again, this is something I train, but a swan on a pond. If you think about a swan on a pond, they're like cool, calm, collected, just going across the pond. But underneath, they're like paddling, 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 paddling. That's how we can have these conversations, is underneath. We can be like paddling and being like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm going to say. Oh my gosh, I got to make sure what my face is doing. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to react. I don't know, but then on top, we're like cool, calm, collected, just having this conversation, allowing the person to say whatever they need to say, because that is going to be the one thing that is going to help them go through whatever they're experiencing, versus them shoving that down and then all of a sudden it explodes. And then at that moment is when people make that transition to thought into action, and that could spur them to take their own life. And so if we can start to have those hard conversations, they're hard, I get it, but you have to get uncomfortable in the uncomfortable conversations and start having them now versus when it's too late. And if you don't know how to do this, search out organizations like BCC Evolution or another one that offers the training, how to recognize all these things. Those, even the high level overviews, are going to be really helpful for anybody that just wants to understand more. But it's critical, these conversations. And then the one tool that I like to give everybody is silence. It's hard, but it is so good to be able to allow people to like process what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And when you give them that silence, then that's when they can actually tell you how they're feeling.
Silence is golden. Yeah. It definitely is. Kelli, thank you for the analogy, the swan over a pond, because I think that really is how we need to approach these conversations, right? Be open like a book, to listen instead of judgmental, right? Keeping ourselves in the present moment too, because let's be realistic. When we're having some of these difficult conversations, they can spring up probably some triggers within us, right? And so embracing the uncomfortable like a comfortable hug is key. Kelli, I want to definitely extend my gratitude to you for being, number one, so generous with your journey. Number two, being so open with sharing with our audience how you've cultivated this level of awareness in your grief journey of your sister's transition by a completed suicide, but also being able to recognize the transformation within yourself through your amazing nonprofit, through you speaking on different stages in order to pay it forward in honor of your sister. So I wanted to definitely extend my gratitude to you for answering the call, because think about all the people who they experience these adverse circumstances in their life and they become a prisoner of it, right? But I'm a firm believer the word adversity does not mean what we think it means. When we look at the word adversity, I think of the word add in the very beginning, as in you're multiplying, and then verse, right? Verses of our life, or the book of our life that we're slowly writing through every experience. So we're adding verses onto our life's journey, our life path, in order for other people to see the possibilities by placing themselves in our shoes through what we've been through. I didn't mean to go on a long tangent, but I felt it come.
I love that. That's awesome.
So we think of adversity, let's look at it from the lens of adding verses onto our life's journey to help other people, right? Kelli, something else that came through while you were speaking about helping to reduce that stigma or converting the shame and stigma to a strength was even moving forward for you, right? As you go on your journey to continue to transform into this version of what I call Kelli 2.0 through honoring your sister, what would you say for others who have been in this boat or who are currently embarking on this journey? What words of wisdom can you leave with them today about granting themselves permission to, number one, honor their grief journey, and number two, cultivate a level of forgiveness within themselves and also others around them?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing is that you have to be willing to take care of yourself to be able to take care of others. And it's really, I mean, it's a journey. It's not something that you're just going to get over. It's not something that's just going to go away. One of my friends said to me at one point in time, which was so powerful, we learn how to grow forward. And that, when she told me that, I was just amazed. And I use that all the time because I'm learning how to grow forward. I'm not learning how to shove it back down. I'm learning through, like, going through it. And it is this journey. You will have those highs, you'll have those lows, and that's okay. And again, reminder for you is that forgiveness is for you. And it's really cool when you're able to release whatever you've been holding on to, and it makes it so much easier. Life just flows. So if it's for nothing else, give it for yourself. And if you can really find that forgiveness and the gratitude, which I love that you talk about, is that I can be grateful for the little things. I can be grateful for the big things. And that is one of the key components that has really helped me through my journey of this process of losing my sister. And it just never stops. It's one of those that it just keeps going, and it's your journey. It's nobody else's. It's your journey. And however you want to travel it is absolutely okay. And don't let anybody else tell you otherwise, because how you're doing it is perfect.
I couldn't have said it better. Grief is a personal experience, but it's a personal journey, a universal experience, right? Because every one of us has experienced a loss or a change of some sort that has devastated us, that has placed us in a state of guilt, resentment, very emotional, questioning every part of life existence. But I'm a firm believer, and you've said this, Kelli, many times throughout this conversation, that the transition of a physical person, of us leaving corporate to become entrepreneurs, of the relationship that went downhill, those transitions open us up to a beautiful transformation within ourselves. And so we never know how these tragedies or travesties, whatever we want to call them, place us on the road or the route for us to be the best version of ourselves and to be able to help others by paying it forward through our journey.
Yes.
Kelli, before we close out, is there any upcoming events or anything that you want to share with our audience so that way they can continue to follow you, your organization? Is there anything upcoming that you want to share with us?
Yeah, we actually soon have our gala. So if you happen to be in Colorado or you want to travel to Colorado, we have our gala coming up on February 18th. My sister passed in February. It was a month that I wanted to just skip, but now I add in the celebration of our gala. So February 18th, We do, like I said earlier, we do a grief and loss support group every single Monday at 12:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And there we have lots of classes that are coming up. So if it is something that you want to get educated about the signs and the symptoms of mental health, substance use, or suicide, you can join any of our classes. They're all virtual. So that can be anywhere in the US. But no matter what you need, if you are somebody that is struggling or you know somebody struggling, please reach out. It's bccevolution.org. We also have lots and lots of resources on our website. So I want you to know that you're not alone, and there are people out there that really, truly want to help you through this journey.
I agree. And thank you so much, Kelli. You know, whatever we can do here on the Grief Grantor to support you and your organization, let us know. We are open doors. And, you know, I'm a firm believer that there's strength in numbers. You know, my mother used to say, teamwork makes the dream work, and it truly does.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was amazing.
Thank you so much, Kelli. Well, everybody, this concludes another episode of the Grief Grantor. Thanks for listening, and until next week, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on the Grief Grantor. May the story shared today light your path and guide your heart toward healing. Remember, with every moment of grief, there's an opportunity for gratitude, resilience, and empowerment. Continue your journey with us online and share your own story, because in this tapestry of life, every thread matters, especially